everyone! So for today's video, I thought we'd talk about my experiences as a blind girl going to pop culture conventions, which happen throughout the year, interstate and also internationally sometimes for me if I'm lucky. And they are so much fun to go to, but they do provide their share of challenges. I love conventions. Attending cons is probably the highlight of my year. I have so many friends from cosplay, and a lot of them happen to be really inconsiderate and live, not in the same state as me or maybe in a different country. So basically conventions are the biggest social events in my calendar. I can definitely say that I'm the only person who struggles to identify their friends when in cosplay. I know some real shapeshifters out there, and also, a lot of people I'm sure are walking around with colored contacts, maybe not wearing your prescription glasses. So we all kind of have to muddle our way through to figure out who's who in cosplay. But to be honest, nowadays I have trouble figuring out who I'm talking to, sometimes even out of cosplay, because my facial recognition doesn't exist for me anymore. So in cosplay, it becomes 100 times harder. I may not even notice my dearest, closest friends come up to me, even if they're just a hair's breadth away. And even after conversing with someone, I still may not be able to quite figure out who they are, and then they'll walk away and I still won't know, and that makes things super awkward. Luckily for me, at the last few conventions that I have attended since going blind, I have always been in a position where I've had a really good friend with me the whole time. Sometimes that changes throughout and I have different friends, but there's always someone there who understands my situation and who's really supportive and basically just helps me get through the con in one piece. I do have my cane with me, but it really does help just to have that buddy who is there to make sure I don't walk somewhere I shouldn't, or get lost, or, have an anxiety attack because I'm in an unfamiliar, really busy environment. They are my absolute rock in every situation, and I would be really, really stuck if I didn't have that support system in place. It does irritate me how often I'll have to turn to that buddy of mine and ask them, oh, who's standing next to so-and-so, and who were we just talking to? I do worry that does bother them, but honestly, I do need that extra bit of assistance and help, and they don't seem to mind so far. But I do think a lot of my friends are catching on. At Gold Coast Supernova last April, one of my friends yelled out from across the room at me, and when I turned around and couldn't locate them, they went, "It's so-and-so," and then kept just sort of talking at me while they were walking over until they were sort of close by to actually converse with, because they knew that by yelling at me, I was not going to be able to find them in that crowded situation at all. And that happened throughout the con, and it's so simple. It just takes someone going, "It's Kurt," or "It's Renee," and all of a sudden, voila, I know that there's a person who's recognized me and my disability and will come up and hang out with me, and it just makes life so much more stress-free. I do feel kind of bad that there will be people I might just walk past who might think I'm ignoring them or didn't want to say hello if they waved at me. It's something I can't control, and I do stress about that a little bit because I don't want to upset anyone. There's always going to be that one person who will get offended if I ask. So if you do see me, please just introduce yourself, remind me who you are, because I will not be able to visually recognize you anymore. And it just makes everything so much easier, and it would mean the world to me if you all did that. Back to dealing with crowds. Now, conventions as a whole are crazy. Depending on which one you're going to, there are tens of thousands of people attending. And that's a lot of people crammed into a really tiny space, particularly the areas like the dealer's room or the vendor's hall. I don't like being in those sort of situations. I feel incredibly claustrophobic, stressed, uncomfortable, and really discombobulated. I get very confused about what's around me because I'm just so jammed in with everyone. And that's basically why, if you're looking for me at a convention, more likely than not, I will be outside in the fresh air, even if it's freezing, because it's just a lot easier for me to handle that sort of space than the inside space. Usually I actually don't go shopping a lot at Artist Alley unless there are artists there who I know of, because browsing for me isn't really a thing. I can't really walk and look at stuff at the same time. Considering I can only see an inch of space, just put that in perspective of how much there is going on. There's a lot, I can't really take it in, so unless I'm with a group of friends who want to go and look at Artist Alley, I generally will stay outside. So it makes more sense to me, which is a shame because I'm sure there's a lot of really cool things happening inside, but they sort of have their value lost on me unless I'm sort of already a participant, so taking part in a panel or performing in a skit. In public, everyday, normal situations such as traversing the city, I have a lot of issues with people just walking into me, trip over my cane and continue walking without a backwards glance. This happens to me so much more frequently in conventions that I just don't even bother calling out after them or saying excuse me or what do you think you're doing? And it's because despite the fact that some people do know what a visual aid or a cane for a blind person is, there are those who do not. And there are a number of people, and it's ridiculous to me, to be honest, there is a number of people at conventions who think my cane is a prop. I'm 100% not joking. They literally think I'm using it as a prop for whoever I'm cosplaying. But let's put this into perspective. I've never cosplayed a blind character. There are many characters who I could cosplay who are blind, and I have done none of them. You have your Daredevil from Marvel or Toph from Avatar. I mean, I do actually kind of want to cosplay Toph, but a lot of these characters who are blind don't actually need a cane because they're lucky enough to have superpowers and they can manage perfectly fine without one. Unfortunately, I do not have superpowers as much as I'd like them, and I do need it to get by day to day. It's something I actually need to have with me. One of my favorite things that I get asked now at conventions by multiple people on multiple occasions is whether I'm cosplaying a blind AU of a character. This first happened to me at Oz Comic Con last year when I was cosplaying Alice in Wonderland. Not some weird alternate reality, steampunk version of Alice in Wonderland. I was cosplaying Alice from the classic Disney animated film, giant petticoats and all. This was also my first convention since losing my sight and using a cane. So I was already really, really nervous, and this was literally the first person I spoke to entering the con. He just came up to me and asked, "Hi, are you cosplaying like a blind Alice in Wonderland?" I was absolutely speechless for a hot second. Like, sorry? He's like, yeah, are you doing like a blind version of that character? And I sort of said, no, I'm actually blind. And he sort of went, oh, and kind of buggered Yovsky that way. I had a couple of other odd comments that convention, and then later on when I went to London Expo in October, I had someone ask me if I was doing a blind Slytherin character. So I was doing Femme Draco Malfoy, which is already an alternate universe, but I think making it a blind AU is probably going a little bit too far. And then I had people behind me talking to each other going, do you think she's cosplaying like a blind Slytherin girl, or is she actually blind? And this was a question that people seemed to have trouble processing together throughout the con. And it happened again at Gold Coast Supernova. You know, it's something I just don't understand where it comes from, and also why you need to know, or why you'd even question why Cinderella is using a stick. She probably needs it more than anything. I love a good alternate universe for any fandom. Put, Voltron into Harry Potter robes. Actually put anything into Harry Potter robes and I'm bound to like it more than I did to begin with. I love changing things up and making things different. But honestly, I think taking a character who is not disabled and putting them in a wheelchair or giving them a blind stick is just going a little bit too far and it's a little bit on the nose. I'm definitely all for representation. I think that's a super important topic that I'll go into later. But in this context of just making it up, I think it's just a little bit weird. And I think it's also a little bit weird to even do it to a Disney character. I don't know, it's just something that I would never have thought someone would do and also get away with. The fundamental reason, I think, as to why people might ask me this question is because they are the sort of social justice warrior types you used to see on Tumblr when Tumblr was a thing, who really would love to stick into you for doing something that they deem as inappropriate. And it just boggles my mind because I would never dream of doing something inappropriate like that. And also it's an item of assistance that you see every day in the normal world. So obviously I'm bringing it with me into the context of a costume because I need it, rather than it's fun. You also can't get a cane like mine in Australia unless you go through one of the organizations. You can't just purchase them. I'm pretty sure you can purchase identifier canes, but one like mine, which had to be fitted, you had to go through a whole process, which we'll discuss later. But I can definitely see that happening where people just want an excuse to get up in someone else's business. That's fine, but also really not. And I don't appreciate it because I already feel really self-conscious about having a visualization of my invisible disability, and it's something that I'm still trying to get over, so comments like that don't help. But to be clear, I am 100% always happy to be part of an educational moment. If someone came up to me and asked me, do I need assistance with something? Can they help me? Or, hi, did you make your costume? Or, how did you make your costume if you're blind? I'm totally happy to have this sort of discourse with someone because I think it's a good thing to talk about, and I don't mind having that discussion. What I do mind is people going out of their way to make someone else feel really uncomfortable, particularly when they're in a vulnerable situation. So now I'm basically stuck with trying to think of a polite way to answer that question when I'm next asked, because I am sure that I will be. And that's okay. It's just one of those things, and if I can open their eyes up a little bit on the subject, then hey, bonus. But why would you ask that question? I mean, honestly, I wouldn't wish blindness on anyone, even a fictional character. So aside from those few negatives and oddities at conventions, so far it has been pretty positive. They do take a lot more out of me than before. I'll usually get back to our hotel in the evening and just crash. Like, I will not be able to leave the room after that because I am so overloaded sensory-wise. I just can't fathom going out into another foreign space with people. And hey, I think that's fair for a lot of people who just want a timeout after a con because, again, there is a lot happening. But overall, it's been pretty good. A lot of my friends, obviously, as I've mentioned, have been super supportive. Photographers seem to approach me the same, even photographers who don't know me. I think they see the costume before the cane, or maybe they just don't notice it or don't care. So that's kind of nice to be treated sort of like a normal person, because obviously I don't feel like I'm a normal human anymore. But hey, being different is cool, so don't forget that. But it's also nice to work with photographers who have known me a long time and have gone on this sort of progressively worsening journey with me up to this point, and they are able to do a shoot with me and help position me in ways that are non-intrusive, non-patronizing, and help me get really good results for my page, which is really nice, and I really appreciate them just treating me like everyone else they work with, even if they're being a little bit nicer. So my friends, I love you. You are my absolute rock. Thank you for putting up with me, and I can't wait to share even more convention fun times with you later on this year and all the years to come, because I'm not going to stop anytime soon. You know, basically, there will always be challenges and people will always find ways to surprise you. Anyways, you guys will see me on the next video, and until then, remember to have courage and be kind to yourself and others. Bye guys!